Brudiclad was a creature of metal and flesh. He came from a place called New Phyrexia, where machines and living beings melded into something both beautiful and terrifying. He wasn't just any creature, though. He was one of the completed. The Phyrexians had a way of taking life and making it their own, twisting and reshaping it into something new, something better in their eyes. Brudiclad was one of those creations, a Myr-like being born of cold steel and twisted sinew. His form reflected that fusion. His body was all sharp angles, wires and metal plating, but there was a sense of life within him, a strange pulse that shouldn't have been there. He moved with purpose like a machine, but with the adaptability of flesh. His purpose wasn't chosen by himself, but by those who made him. In the heart of New Phyrexia, he had no choice but to obey. That was the nature of their world, submission to the greater whole, the great work. He remembered the day he was taken from his time, though remembering didn't come easily to someone like him. His mind was a fog of calculations, the thought patterns of a machine, overlaid with the memories of a being who once had flesh and bone. A time rift opened, splitting the world of Phyrexia. The crisis that followed was unlike anything the Phyrexians had encountered. Time itself bent and snapped around them, pulling Brudiclad from the future into a world that was not his own, Dominaria. He had never seen it before, but it was clear that this world was not Phyrexia. Dominaria was different. There was something about the air, the way the people moved, the way the sun hung in the sky. It wasn't a world of twisted, sharp-edged landscapes like the one he knew. It was a world that still held on to the idea of hope and life in its truest, untainted form. The contrast was jarring, but Brudiclad was not there to admire the view. He had been sent through time and space for a reason, and as he adapted to his new environment, he was ready to fulfill whatever purpose his makers had set for him. But Dominaria was not so easily conquered. This world had heroes, warriors, beings of power who stood in opposition to Phyrexia. Brudiclad found himself in a battle unlike any he had known before. Time rifts flickered across the landscape, and reality itself seemed to shudder under the weight of forces beyond mortal comprehension. It was chaotic and brutal, but Brudiclad was made for this kind of conflict. He had no fear of death, no fear of pain. His body, part machine and part living tissue, knew nothing but the cold logic of war. Brudiclad fought, always on the side of Phyrexia, even in this strange place. He knew no other way. The battlefields of Dominaria were littered with the remains of those who stood against them, but the war was far from over. Time was unstable, bending and looping around itself. It felt to Brudiclad as though the universe itself was trying to resist Phyrexia's inevitable victory, but that victory was only a matter of time. And time, as Brudiclad knew it, was not something that could hold them back forever. The time rift that had brought Brudiclad to Dominaria was part of the time spiral crisis. It had opened the door to futures that might have been, futures that still could be. Brudiclad came from one such future, a world where Phyrexia had triumphed, where the multiverse had fallen under the rule of the completed. In that future, Brudiclad had fought in battles that spanned worlds. He had seen planes torn apart by the machinery of Phyrexia, had witnessed the fall of civilizations to the relentless advance of his kind. But that future wasn't set in stone. It was just a possibility, a fragment of what could be. And now in the present, he was caught between what had been and what might come. He knew that his future would come to pass, though. The Phyrexians were patient. They would wait as long as they needed to, rebuild their strength and strike again. The invasion of the multiverse was inevitable. When the invasion began, Brudiclad was there, standing on the front lines. He had returned to his future, or rather his future had come to meet him. The Phyrexians launched their assault on reality itself, spreading their influence across worlds, and Brudiclad fought alongside them once again. He was not just a soldier in this war, but a symbol of what Phyrexia could achieve. A creature that embodied the perfect fusion of metal and flesh, of the living and the mechanical. It was a brutal campaign. The forces of the multiverse rallied to defend their homes, their lives, and their very existence. But the Phyrexians were relentless. Their armies swept across the plains, and Brudiclad, like so many others, was there to ensure their victory. He didn't think of it as conquest, though. He didn't think of it as victory or defeat. Those were concepts that belonged to beings with desires, with hopes. Brudiclad was beyond such things. He was a machine of war, built for a single purpose, and he would see that purpose through to the end. There were moments, though, when even Brudiclad couldn't help but wonder about the world he fought to destroy. He had seen beauty in Dominaria, beauty that Phyrexia could never understand. He had seen life that wasn't twisted by machinery, that wasn't bound to serve a greater whole. And for a moment, just a flicker in the storm of his mind, he wondered what it would be like to live in such a world. But the thought passed quickly. He was Phyrexian, and that meant he was destined to bring about the great work. There was no room for doubt, no room for second thoughts. His body, his mind, and his very essence had been shaped for one purpose: to ensure the dominance of Phyrexia. He would not stray from that path. As the invasion pressed on, Brudiclad fought without hesitation. The Phyrexians would win, of that he was sure. And when they did, the multiverse would be reshaped in their image. Brudiclad would stand at the forefront of that new reality, a creature of flesh and metal, a perfect fusion of life and machine. He would look out upon the conquered worlds and know that in the end, there was no other way it could have been.